Oh my God, stop right now! The scream tore through the still night as the massive glass window shattered, shards scattering across the grand hall. In the flash of light, Maya, the small black maid, threw her arms wide, shielding Henry, the frail veteran father, from the gleaming knife of the intruder. Blood, the rush of air, and pounding heartbeats tangled together in suffocating rhythm. Richard Carter, the millionaire, stood frozen on the staircase, unable to believe his eyes. But an even greater shock still loomed ahead, the truth of who the real traitor inside this very house was. The shards of glass still littered the floor, not yet cleared away, while the flashing lights of police cars outside the gate bathed the grand hall of the Beverly Hills mansion in red and blue. Outside, the rain had not completely ceased. The wind howled through the rows of palms, as if determined to stir more chaos into a house once accustomed to elegant silence. But inside, the turmoil did not come from nature, it came from people. Elaine, Richard's beautiful young fiancée, with rain-soaked brown hair in disarray and eyes blazing with panic and anger, pushed into the crowd of staff and police. Pointing straight at Maya, she screamed, her voice sharp as a blade. It was her. She opened the door for them. The words fell like a second lightning strike, thickening the already tense air. All eyes snapped toward Maya, the small black maid, still trembling after her brush with death. Her curly hair was wild, her hands still streaked with blood from the glass cuts, but in her eyes lay a quiet steadiness. She did not respond. Her silence only fed the suspicion swirling around her. Whispers rippled like waves. Some shook their heads in pity, others furrowed their brows with doubt. In Beverly Hills high society, rumors traveled faster than light, and tonight they had already begun to ignite in the hearts of those gathered. A few staff members inched back, avoiding Maya's gaze, as if she carried invisible danger with her. Richard Carter, standing on the staircase, his heartbeat still erratic from the horror moments earlier, was drowning in a clash of emotions. He had seen Maya throw herself in front of his father. He had seen blood flow from her arm. Yet Elaine's shrill accusation rang through the grand hall, shaking him. In an instant, reason and emotion collided, making judgment heavier than ever. Henry, the elderly father in his wheelchair, struggled to move, his lips trembling, as if trying to say something. But shock and weakness left him only broken sounds no one could understand. Maya glanced at him, her eyes reflecting both gratitude and pain. She knew he wanted to speak for her, but he could not. Elaine, like the star of a stage, seized the moment. She rushed closer to Richard, her voice quivering with theatrical tears. "Don't you see? The balcony doors never open by themselves. Only someone inside would know how. She betrayed this family." Her words pierced Richard's mind like needles, layering doubt upon doubt. In a heartbeat, a decision was made. Richard turned to Maya, his voice low and cold, stripped of the warmth from mere minutes ago. "You leave this house tonight." No one dared breathe. The command fell like an iron gate slamming shut on Maya's fate. She nodded faintly, offering no defense, only bent down to pick up a fallen cloth, wiping the blood from her hand. Her footsteps echoed through the vast hallway, each strike pressing down on the fragile heart burdened with injustice. The mansion gates closed behind her, the screech of metal mixing with the pounding rain. Maya stood in the night, her shoulders trembling, whether from cold or humiliation no one could tell. The red and blue glow behind her faded, leaving only a hollow void inside her chest. Henry remained trapped inside, surrounded by lies, unable to speak. And she, the one who shielded him with her own body, was cast out like a stranger. But was Richard's decision truly the end for Maya? Or was it only the first spark of a storm yet to come, one that would tear down every deceit within the Carter estate? All right then, my dear viewers, if you're still here and finding this story intriguing, drop a comment with the number 1 or simply say, "I'm still here to keep listening." A week after that night of chaos, the Carter mansion regained its usual outward splendor, but inside, the air was still heavy, haunted by an invisible ghost. The shattered glass had been replaced, yet the sound of it breaking still seemed to echo through the halls. The staff whispered every time they passed the grand foyer, and Richard Carter, the cold-faced millionaire of Beverly Hills, still carried an unsettled confusion in his eyes. He had cast Maya out, the woman who had risked her life to shield his father, and in the quiet nights that followed, the memory clawed mercilessly at his conscience. Meanwhile, the police continued their work in silence. They were not so quick to believe the hasty accusations made on that stormy night. Detectives sifted through security camera footage, frame by frame, like opening a diary that had accidentally recorded the truth. One early morning, as the first light brushed the palms outside, a frame appeared on the screen that made the entire team fall silent. Elaine, the woman who always appeared in silk dresses and sweet smiles before the public. In the clip, she stood on the balcony, phone pressed to her ear. No audio was recorded, but her hurried posture, sharp gestures, and the gleam of a digital watch catching the light as she signaled all lined up precisely with the moment the burglars broke in. The lead agent tapped a finger against the cold metal table, brows furrowed. This was no longer suspicion, it was living proof. The deeper they dug, the more it aligned. Cell tower records showed Elaine had called a series of unfamiliar numbers, the same ones police were tracing in connection with the theft ring. The trap had been set long before, and Maya had merely been the pawn offered up as a sacrifice. The news went straight to Richard. He sat in his dark-wood office, surrounded by shelves and oil paintings, eyes locked on the replaying clip. As Elaine's image flickered on the screen, his heart grew heavy as stone. Anger mixed with shame boiled up inside him. He remembered Maya stepping into the storm, her shoulders trembling, and the cold command he had uttered, "You leave this house." He had driven out the only one who dared stand between a blade and his father's frail body. Henry, his elderly father, sat nearby, as if he too now understood everything. His clouded eyes glimmered with certainty. His trembling hand clenched tight on the armrest, a silent reminder to his son, "Don't let truth be buried beneath lies." Richard tilted his head back, pressing his hands over his face, breathing as if he hadn't in years. In that lavish office, the ticking of the wall clock struck like an invisible sentence. He even let out a bitter, hollow laugh. Money could buy everything in life, except the truth. And truth had just struck him like the heaviest blow of all. Outside, Beverly Hills carried on with its glamour. The press began circling, dropping vague headlines about the strange break-in at the Carter estate. The sensational titles spread faster by the hour, and Richard knew if he didn't step forward with the truth, the mansion would be swallowed by poisonous rumor. He stared out the window, where sunlight flooded the gardens, while inside him everything was dark. Only one question cut deeper with each passing moment. How could he find Maya again, the woman who had left under a weight of shame she never deserved? And if he found her, would she forgive him after being doubted and cast aside by his own hand? And before we continue with the next part of this story, don't forget to subscribe and like this video. Oh, and drop a comment below telling us where you're watching from. We'd love to know. The church bells rang out on Sunday morning, their sound long and clear, as if washing away the dust of a heavy week. Sunlight pierced through the stained glass windows, painting pale streaks of red and green across the marble floor. In the last pew, Maya sat quietly, clutching a worn cloth bag, her small frame swallowed by the vast stillness. Her face bore deep lines of exhaustion, yet her eyes still glowed, as though faith was the only thing that had never been stolen from her. The heavy wooden door suddenly opened. Richard Carter walked in, tall and imposing in a flawless gray suit, yet his steps were slow, weighted. In his hands was a thick file evidence that could not be denied. The church staff looked on in surprise, some whispering, for it was not every day that a Beverly Hills millionaire stepped into such a modest place. Richard stopped beside the pew where Maya sat, his broad shoulders dipping as he lowered himself. The file trembled slightly in his grasp, not from the breeze, but from the guilt that had made the hands of a man accustomed to power turn weak. He opened it. Photos from the cameras, call logs, every line and detail exposed the truth. Elaine had been behind the break-in. Maya's eyes rested on the documents, There was no triumph in her face, no gloating, only a soft sadness, the kind worn by someone long accustomed to being doubted. Richard slowly closed the file and bowed his head. The sight startled many in the church, a powerful millionaire bowing before a fragile maid. But for Richard, this was no performance. It was the only act of repentance left to him. Henry was there too, seated in his old wheelchair. When his gaze found Maya, his lips trembled, eyes moist with tears. No words were needed. Just one blink, one fragile gesture, and Maya understood. He wanted her back. A pause hung heavy. Maya tightened her grip on the bag strap, her mind torn in two. To return meant facing whispers and suspicious stares that hadn't faded. Yet deep in her memory lingered the image of the old man trembling in the storm, his eyes pleading. Duty weighed heavier than fear. She nodded. A small nod, but enough to make the entire sanctuary seem to glow brighter. When Maya stepped once more through the Carter estate's iron gates, the mansion stirred. The gardener froze mid-swing, the butler furrowed his brow, the maids exchanged hushed glances. They had seen her leave in disgrace, and now she returned with a new identity. No longer just maid, this time she was Henry's personal protector, handpicked by Richard himself. A new brass plate on the old man's door gleamed. Private care and security. Maya Brooks. At the first dinner after her return, Maya stood quietly behind Henry's chair, her eyes scanning every corner. Elaine was absent, citing the need for rest, but everyone knew the undercurrent had not subsided. The table was hushed, the only sounds the clinking of silver on porcelain. Richard lifted his gaze and caught Maya's eyes. Between them flickered a faint, strained smile, an unspoken truce, fragile yet real. In that grand room, silence no longer pressed down like before. Now it felt like a vow the truth had won. But was truth strong enough to shield them from the storm still gathering when Elaine, exposed and humiliated, was still out there, far from finished? What happened inside the church did not stay within its four walls. It spread like fire meeting the wind. The next morning, a photo of Maya standing behind Henry's wheelchair, the stained glass light shining onto her resolute eyes, appeared on the cover of a local newspaper. Just hours later, that image was shared on Twitter, then jumped to TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, as if all of America was witnessing a modern-day fairy tale unfold. The press gave her a name both simple and radiant. Hero Maid of Beverly Hills. CNN ran the headline, "Small black woman shields veteran from a knife and gets fired." Late-night talk shows scrambled to dissect it, with hosts pounding their desks in laughter. In Hollywood, superheroes wear capes. In Beverly Hills, heroes wear Maid uniforms. Audiences erupted in applause. The hashtag number Hero Maid exploded. Millions of TikTok videos recreated the moment, from playful animations to users wrapping blankets around their shoulders, pretending to shield their pets from knives. In the comments, endless lines scrolled by. She deserves more than this. This is what real loyalty looks like. If you doubt her, just try sitting in that wheelchair yourself. The Carter office was swarmed by the press. Satellite vans clogged the gates, reporters shoved microphones forward, cameras zoomed in on every employee coming and going. Some staff looked annoyed, but a few smiled quietly, at least this time. Justice seemed to side with the powerless. Meanwhile, Maya kept to her simple life. She went to the market, stopped by the church, still wore her old coat. But now, every step she took, someone recognized her. An elderly Mexican woman at the market clapped her hands and slipped her an extra bundle of greens without charge. A group of white college students asked for a selfie, shouted "Hero Maid," and posted it instantly. Maya, embarrassed, laughed. "A hero? I'm not a hero. I just did what anyone should have done." Yet that laugh, so simple and warm, only fueled the story's reach. Elaine was different. She was like a cornered animal. Her plan to smear Maya had backfired miserably. Instead, Maya had become a symbol. Elaine started seeding rumors online under anonymous accounts. Claims that Maya had a criminal record, that she was exploiting Richard's pity. But the internet remembered better than she expected. Within hours, users dug up proof of the opposite. Maya had donated from her meager wages to veterans funds, had volunteered at orphanages. The tweets Elaine tried to plant were ratioed into oblivion, and the hashtag number Elaine Liar began trending. Richard watched it all unfold in silence. He hated exposing family matters to the public eye, but this time he had to admit the court of public opinion was doing what he hadn't done yet, clearing Maya's name. Henry sat in the living room, his eyes fixed on the television screen, lips trembling as though he wanted to smile. One afternoon, Richard quietly stepped into the garden and saw Maya teaching neighborhood kids how to fold paper airplanes. They laughed, their planes flying crookedly across the lawn before crashing in heaps. The sight, so pure and light, made Richard chuckle softly, a rare sound, as if he too had been freed a little. But the storm was far from over. Elaine was not someone who let go easily. The more she saw her name drowned under mocking hashtags, the more she nursed her hatred. And this time, instead of mere rumors, she was preparing something else. Something darker, more dangerous. The television screen in the Carter Mansion's living room glowed bright on a midweek evening. Not the usual business news, but a live talk show. On the studio's velvet blue sofa, Elaine sat in a white dress, her makeup so flawless that even her tears sparkled like diamonds. The camera zoomed in, and the studio audience held their breath at every trembling gesture of the betrayed fiancé. The host's warm voice filled the air as Elaine lowered her gaze and slowly spun her tale. She painted Maya as ambitious, scheming, manipulating Richard's sympathy to steal the role of mistress of the house. A few gasps of pity rippled from the audience, and as if staged by a director, the camera caught the perfect shot. Elaine dabbing her eyes with a tissue, an image made for television. But outside, not everyone was buying it. On Twitter, clips from the interview spread like wildfire. Some mocked, "She's crying, but her mascara hasn't smudged. Even Hollywood wouldn't dare fake it this badly." Sarcastic comments piled up, splitting public opinion in two believers and skeptics. Richard watched it all from his office. He was no stranger to media theatrics, but this performance aimed its blade straight at Maya, the woman he was trying to clear. He knew if he didn't act, public sentiment would shift, and Elaine might seize back control. A few days later, the Carter Mansion became the stage for a press conference. News vans lined the palm-shaded street, reporters swarmed, and camera flashes burst like lightning. A podium was set up in the grand hall, where Richard usually welcomed dignitaries now repurposed to unveil the truth. Richard emerged in a dark suit, calm in posture but with eyes sharp as steel. Beside him stood Maya, her expression neither proud nor shy, but strangely serene, as if she had stopped caring about gossip. Behind them, Henry sat in his wheelchair, frail frame cloaked in dignity, his eyes shining brighter than ever. The microphone crackled. Richard opened a file and presented documents one by one alongside surveillance footage. On the large screen behind him, Elaine appeared clearly on the balcony, phone pressed to her ear. Extracted audio records played the hurried, secretive tone undeniable. The room erupted. Cameras flashed. Reporters surged forward. In that instant, public opinion flipped in a heartbeat. Those who had defended Elaine fell silent, while whispers of outrage grew louder. A female journalist smirked to her colleague. "No amount of pretty crying can beat cell tower records." Elaine, watching the press conference from her private apartment, hastily switched off the television. This time her manufactured tears never got the chance to fall. On social media, the hashtag #HeroMaid surged back to dominance, while #Elaine Liar shot to the top of trending. Memes spread. Maya blocking a knife on one side, Elaine clutching her phone on the other. No caption was needed. Truth was self-evident. Back at the mansion, as the press conference ended, Henry motioned for Maya to wheel him back to his room. Along the hallway, staff bowed their heads to her, their gazes no longer skeptical but respectful. A silent, yet powerful reversal of status from the humiliated maid to the public face of truth. But now that public opinion leaned toward justice, would Elaine accept defeat? Or was this exposure merely the prelude to a deeper, darker revenge? And you, my dear audience, are you still with us? Take a moment to relax, maybe grab a glass of water, then continue listening to the next part of this gripping story. Comment 1 if you're enjoying it, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button. That morning, the major newspapers all carried the same bold headline across their front pages. Board members abandon Elaine Carter. Images of the Charity Foundation's board walking out of a building. Faces stern and distant, spread across the media like birds fleeing a rotted branch. No one wanted their name tied to a scandal so thoroughly exposed. Elaine, once hailed as the Queen of Charity in Beverly Hills, was now left in a hollow penthouse, clutching her phone, dialing number after number, only to meet silence. In stark contrast, across the city, an entirely different scene unfolded. On the Grand Plaza before the Veterans Hall, hundreds of American flags rippled in the breeze. Rows of chairs stretched neatly across the square, red, white, and blue ribbons draped with solemn grace. The atmosphere was both reverent and warm, like a homecoming for someone who had never worn a uniform yet acted with the courage of a soldier. Maya, dressed in a simple navy blue dress, walked between two lines of veterans in crisp uniforms. The steady cadence of boots striking the stone floor formed a rhythm that made her heartbeat quicken. Her hands trembled slightly, but her eyes stayed steady. She wasn't used to attention, even less to applause, yet each clap that rose around her seemed to affirm that truth had finally been seen. Henry sat in the front row, clad in an old military suit from his service days. Though his shoulders were frail and his hands shook, his back remained straight, his eyes shining with pride. When Maya approached, he reached out, gripped her hand, and whispered, "You are the true warrior." The words were fragile as breath, yet powerful enough to blur her vision with tears. The entire hall rose to its feet, applause crashing like a wave against the vaulted ceiling, making the moment eternal. The Medal of Honor was placed in her hands. Its golden shine caught the light, gleaming against her modest dress. Cameras panned across the hall, broadcasting live nationwide. Millions of Americans, families in Texas, cafe-goers in New York sat frozen, watching a black woman who had once been cast out in humiliation now honored as a symbol of courage and loyalty. In the back row, an old veteran in a wheelchair chuckled and whispered to his neighbor, "Back in the day, we had the Purple Heart. Today, she deserves the heart of America itself." His remark, simple yet profound, drew laughter through the rows, softening the solemnity with a touch of warmth. Meanwhile, in a lavish penthouse, Elaine stared at the television screen where Maya stood on stage, medal in hand. Her eyes were bloodshot, her lips pressed tight. The wine glass slipped from her grip, shattering against the floor, the red spills spreading like a wound that would never heal. A woman who once thrived in the flash of cameras now had only the hollow glow of a screen reflecting back her ruin. The contrast was undeniable. On one side, quiet glory that shone brighter than gold. On the other, a silent collapse beyond redemption. And all of America leaned toward the light. Yet, amid the tears of gratitude and the thunder of applause, one question lingered in the silence. Would this honor be enough to shield Maya from Elaine's coming wrath, the wrath of a woman who had never once accepted defeat? The night after the ceremony of honor, the Carter mansion seemed wrapped in a rare blanket of peace. Outside, the wind swept through the palm trees, their rustling leaves like a lullabying choir. On the living room shelf, the medal gleamed under the chandelier's light, reflecting Maya's shadow as she stood alone, still caught in the emotions of the day. For her, being called a warrior by a veteran like Henry was the greatest reward of all. But peace rarely lasts. A faint sound broke the quiet, the soft scrape of movement on the carpet near the front door. Maya spun around. A white envelope slid through the crack, settling under the dim light. No doorbell, no figure outside. A chill ran down her spine. She bent down to pick it up, her fingers trembling. On the front, only 3 words. For you. No seal, no return address. Maya unfolded the paper. In hasty, smudged black ink, the message read, "The mastermind behind the break-in has not been revealed, beware." The blurred strokes looked rushed, but the warning was sharp enough to pierce through the fragile sense of safety she had just begun to feel. Maya stood frozen, the ticking of the wall clock pounding each word deeper into her mind. She remembered that harrowing night, the flash of the knife, Henry trembling in his wheelchair. So it wasn't over after all. Richard stepped out from the hallway, shirt unbuttoned, holding a glass of unfinished wine. His eyes fell on the envelope, then on Maya. No words were needed. Their glance alone was enough to admit this wasn't a prank. He took the paper, his brow furrowing. A millionaire might know how to counter rivals in the boardroom, but an unseen enemy out there? That was a different battlefield altogether. Henry had woken as well. The old man wheeled himself out, finding Maya and Richard at the door. In his eyes flickered the sharpness of a veteran who had known war. Cold, watchful. He laid his trembling hand over Maya's, his gaze saying what his lips could not. Don't let your guard down. The fight has only begun. No one slept that night. Richard sat at his desk, the lamp casting long shadows across the floor, the case files spread open. Maya by the window, clutching the letter as if it were a shard of dangerous truth. Henry in his room, holding an old wartime photo to his chest, the habit he always turned to whenever he felt darkness closing in. Outside, the night wind rose, palm fronds clashing like whispered warnings. Through the glass, Maya thought she saw a shadow moving along the fence. No proof, only instinct. But instinct had once saved her life in the storm, and now it whispered again. By morning, the press still buzzed with photos of Maya receiving the medal. People laughed, mocking Elaine as the fallen queen. But behind the laughter, no one knew of the dangerous secret that had slipped into the house. Another hand, perhaps stronger than Elaine's, was pulling the strings from the shadows. Maya folded the letter, locked it in a drawer. Her heart pounded, but her eyes didn't waver. She knew by stepping into this house, by risking her life for Henry, there was no turning back. Yet one question echoed through her mind, and in the minds of every listener. Who was truly behind it all? And would Maya have the strength to face the next darkness waiting for her? The night in Beverly Hills closed with the Carter Mansion's lights glittering, as if to erase the chaos that had just unfolded. Maya was no longer the small maid, but a symbol of loyalty and courage. From a place of humiliation, she now stood tall, receiving a medal before millions. And yet the mysterious envelope slipped under the door reminded everyone the darkness had not lifted. Someone else, someone truly pulling the strings from the shadows, had yet to reveal themselves. The story, therefore, was not ending but shifting into a new chapter, where Maya, Richard, and Henry would be forced to confront even greater dangers. And the audience, too, would remain on that journey, for justice never comes once and stays. It must always be defended, just as Maya had thrown herself forward in the stormy night. The lesson left behind is simple but powerful. People can lose their honor, their trust, even their place in a family, but the truth will always find a way to speak. And sometimes, one small act extending your arms to shield someone fragile can shift the course of everything. Dear viewers, whether you're watching this story from a small town in Texas, the bustle of New York, or a quiet home in California, remember this: courage doesn't need a cape. It can appear in the most ordinary of moments. What do you think about the mysterious envelope? Who do you believe is truly behind it all? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Share this video with your friends and family across the United States, and help spread the message of truth and courage. And don't forget to hit follow, because part 2 of this story will unveil secrets even more shocking. Because the fight to reclaim the light has only just begun.